Sorry, we glitched out there. We continue our reading. For King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella of Spain, giving Muslim traders gold for spices meant trading with the enemy. In 1492, Ferdinand and Isabella's army had just completed the reconquest of Spain from the Muslims. That same year, Christopher Columbus sailed for the New World. Ferdinand and Isabella paid for Columbus's trip. They did not expect him to discover a new world. Instead, they wanted him to find a direct route to spice-rich Asia. In those days, they called it the Indies. This would avoid any further need to deal with Muslim traders. In 1492, Columbus set sail with 3 small ships. He believed that Asia and its spices were really only about 5,000 kilometers away. In reality, the distance was more than 20,000 kilometers. When Columbus returned to Spain the next year, he brought some spice samples with him. Though he didn't have pepper, he did bring a kind of cinnamon as well as other spices. These were enough to convince King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella to pay for another expedition. Columbus sailed on 3 more voyages, never got to Asia. Nor did he find enough spices to make his explorations pay off. However, on his 4th trip, he discovered something even more valuable. Gold. There's a picture here, a replica of what one of those ships would have looked like. The first Europeans to capture and enslave Africans were the Portuguese. The Spanish began transporting enslaved Africans by the early 1500s. Over the next few decades, explorers such as Hernando Cortes and Francisco Pizarro conquered most of Central and South America. This is where Columbus had landed. They forced the Aztecs and Incas into slavery, making them dig for this gold and also silver. Many of these Native Americans soon died from epidemics of disease like smallpox that they got from the Europeans. To replace their lost workers, the Spanish and Portuguese began importing slaves from Africa. The first treasure fleet sailed from South America to Europe in the 1520s. Most of these ships, each carrying tons of gold and silver, traveled in convoys for protection against pirates and English and Dutch privateers. By the mid-1600s, the slave trade had passed into the hands of the Dutch and the English. In the 1700s, the English began sending large numbers of enslaved Africans to America. Between 10 and 28 million men, women, and children were taken by force from Africa during the slave trade. It was terrible. Many passed through the slave ports in Senegal, Gambia, and Nigeria. As many as 20% died in the terrible conditions on the slave ships. And you can see a diagram there to the left to show how they just packed these poor slaves in. Now some piracy. In the late 1500s, Ireland's Grace O'Malley gathered a pirate fleet. Her fleet terrorized English ships carrying goods from the New World. Queen Elizabeth I struggled without success to destroy O'Malley's ships. In 1572, the Queen hired her own private pirate captain when she made Francis Drake a privateer, someone licensed by the government. Drake was expected to give a percentage of any treasure he got to the Queen. In the early 1600s, Muslim privateers employed by the rulers of Algeria in North Africa attacked Spanish, French, and English ships in the Mediterranean. Among the most successful privateers to sail against the Spanish in the 1600s were Samuel Palache and Moses Cohen Enrique. Both sailed for Holland. At the same time, Holland was fighting to free itself from Spain, which occupied the Netherlands. Palache and Enrique helped to finance the Dutch rebellion. Enrique also saved an almost bankrupt Holland when he helped capture a Spanish treasure fleet filled with gold and silver. This was the first time an entire treasure fleet had been seized and was the greatest single haul by any pirate. So there we have it. So the uploaded PDF there are your questions. Remember, the last question, there really isn't an appropriate answer in this piece. We will see that in some other pieces. Good luck. Any questions, send me an email. And when you're done, share it with me as a doc. Take care.